Welcome back to the Tutorium in Intensive English at UIC. My name is Katie, and today in our pronunciation lesson, we're going to be talking about reductions. And this is going to be something we're going to be talking about for the next couple modules. Today, we're going to talk about strong versus weak forms. Okay, so what are strong and weak forms? Weak forms are reduced forms of words. So when we use a reduced or weak form of a word, we may change the sound of the vowel to a reduced vowel sound like schwa. And we may also delete sounds from the word, right, in order to make its pronunciation easier, shorter, faster. Now, this is related to a topic that we've already discussed, content and function words. I don't know if you remember those from quite a few modules ago. Remember that most of the time, our function words, these are our words that serve really just a grammatical function. They don't have as much meaning. A lot of times these words are used in their reduced or weak form. Okay, so they're completely reduced, and we would call that their weak form. Now, there are instances when we can stress and use a strong form of these function words, right? We want to add emphasis to something, or maybe if we're clarifying, and maybe that's why we're adding emphasis, that could be a reason why we might not reduce that form. We might use a strong form. Now, why do we care about this? This is always a question we want to ask ourselves, like, is this something I should care about? Well, first, of course, knowing about reductions and being able to approximate some reductions can help with our speaking, right? It helps us approximate that natural rhythm of English, because to capture that rhythm, it's not only about finding the strong and the stressed words or syllables or sounds, but also in the contrast, making the other sounds reduced or weakening them. It's that alternation that creates our rhythm. Now, however, I don't want anyone to feel like you need reductions in order to be understood. You absolutely don't. And honestly, if you're not to a point where your language is ready to use reductions, they can actually work against you, right? And they can kind of make it harder for you to be understood. So I don't want anyone to rush into these, okay? And the other thing I want to talk about really quickly is sometimes when we, people they'll hear people use reductions and they'll say, oh, that's lazy. They're being lazy with the way they're speaking, or that's not good English. And that is absolutely not true. So I'm telling you here, that's not true, right? Reductions are not lazy. They are not bad English. Every native speaker of English uses reductions all the time in all contexts. Okay, so all the reductions that we're going to talk about today, I use those every time I speak, right? No matter who I'm speaking to, I use them. Okay, so don't feel like you can't use them, right? Now, today we're going to be talking about these four categories: reductions with prepositions, auxiliary verbs, conjunctions, and pronouns. Okay, so let's start with our prepositions, and we're going to talk about to and of. Okay, so here with these two words, our vowel sound is going to be reduced to the weak form, and the weak vowel form is the schwa sound here, the Remember that schwa is the most commonly used vowel sound in the English language. Let's look at some examples. So here we have Jordan likes to spend time with her cats, and Rachel ordered a cool pair of shoes. Now, if I'm saying this quickly, I'm never going to pronounce to like that, right? I'm going to pronounce it to. Jordan likes to. So almost likes and to come together, and to just kind of hooks on to the end of likes. Likes to. Jordan likes to spend time with her cats. Jordan likes to spend time with her cats. Likes to spend time with her cats. Okay? Jordan likes to spend time with her cats. And we have Rachel with her pair of shoes. So I won't say of shoes. I will say of, pair of, pair of, pair of. Rachel ordered a pair of shoes. Pair of shoes. Now, we can also lose the final consonant sound with of. And that we can see with our example with Rachel's pair of shoes. I think when I'm speaking quickly, I'm much more likely to say the sentence this way. Rachel ordered a pair of shoes. Para. And that of just becomes schwa. Rachel ordered a cool pair of shoes. Rachel ordered a cool pair of shoes. Para. Para. Cool pair of shoes. And then we have Veet, who had an amazing breakfast, if you ask me. Veet ate a piece of pizza for breakfast. We've all been there, right? You had pizza the day before. It's cold. It's delicious. You're going to have it for your breakfast. No judgment here. Piece of pizza. Veet ate a piece of pizza for breakfast. Piece of pizza. Piece of pizza. It's kind of like, sounds like one long word. Piece of pizza. Okay, let's move on to auxiliary verbs. Okay, so if you remember auxiliary verbs, we'll get into what verbs we're going to look at here in a moment, but these are a function word category, right? So that means most of the time when we're going to use an auxiliary verb, it's going to be in its weak form. But it could be strong if we're going to add emphasis or we want to clarify, right? We'll talk. I'm going to give an example of that in a little bit. And we're actually going to be talking more about auxiliary verbs and reductions in our next module. So this is kind of just an introduction. So today we're going to be looking at 3 auxiliary verbs: can, will, and have. Now remember that have can be a main verb. But if you are using have with in a compound sentence, right? Or in a compound verb tense, I'm sorry, a compound verb tense like present perfect or past perfect, then it's going to reduce. It's going to usually be in its weak form because it's a helping verb. It's an auxiliary verb. So let's look at our first example. We have 3 examples, 3 sentences. Dave can play the trombone. This is true. I don't know if you know Dave, but he is a teacher at the Tutorium and he is learning how to play the trombone right now, which I think is pretty cool. He will play for us later. That is a lie. Sadly, he will not be playing for us later. I'm just using that as an example. And what new skill have you learned? Now, you notice when I said these 3 sentences, I used the strong form of all of those verbs: can, will, have. So you'll notice now we're going to look at the weak forms, and the vowel sound is very different. Let's look at can, for example. Now, can, when I say it like that, that is the strong form. But this here on my screen, that is our weak form. And I say that can. Dave can. Dave can. Dave can. Dave can play the trombone. Dave can play the trombone. So play and Dave are stressed, right? So my pitch goes back up when I hit play. Dave can play the trombone. Dave can play the trombone. Will is my strong form of the modal verb will. Now, when I say it in a weak form, I say wool or ul. And honestly, if I am speaking, I think I'm much more likely to delete the initial consonant W and just say ul, right? It's just easier. Our mouth just goes to what's easiest. So that would be he'll. He'll play for us later. He'll play for us later. He'll play, right? So he and ul are reduced. He'll play for us later. He'll play for us later. Play and later are the words that we hear the most. And then we have, which the weak forms are have or of. And kind of like the will, I think in speaking, we have a higher tendency to make it as economical as possible for our mouths. And so a lot of times we don't pronounce that H either. We kind of gravitate towards the of, right? What new skill of, what new skill have you learned? Skill of, what new skill have you learned? Skill of, what new skill have you learned? You learned. What new skill have you learned? Skill and learn are stressed, and the ul and the u are reduced, right? What new skill have you learned? All right. Conjunctions. We're going to be talking about the conjunction and. Now, conjunctions are just those words that join together, but, and, so, for, okay? So in and, we're going to lose the final consonant sound as well as the initial vowel sound. So that means the only thing that's left is the right? I'll have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Peanut butter and jelly. Peanut butter and jelly. I'll have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I have class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She works evenings and weekends. She works evenings and weekends. Evenings and weekends. Evenings and weekends. She works evenings and weekends. You can see why, give yourself a break. When I say those really quickly, it's fast, right? So don't feel bad if this is hard when you're speaking with native speakers. Totally. Native speakers speak quickly. Think about how you speak your own language. You speak it fast. All right, pronouns. We're going to be looking specifically at the pronouns he, him, her, and them. Okay, and for all these pronouns, we are going to lose that initial consonant sound, right? So the H's and the th sound, or I'm sorry, th. This is the voiced eth sound in them. So let's look at some examples. What did he tell you? What did he? So that he just becomes the vowel sound E. What did he? Did he? Did he? Did he? Kind of like that word ditty, like a song. It's another word for song, a ditty. What did he tell you? What did he? What did he tell you? What did he tell you? Can you talk to him for me? So him reduces the vowel changes and we remove that H sound. So it becomes not im, Can you talk to him? To him for me. Talk to him for me. Talk to him for me. To him. To him. Can you talk to him for me? Her becomes talk to her. Kind of just almost an R sound when it's next to that O. Have you talked to her lately? R. Have you talked to her? To her. Have you talked to her lately? Talked to her lately. So talked and lately have the stress. To and her are reduced completely. Have you talked to her lately? To her lately. And finally, them sounds just like him, becomes Where did you see him? See him. Where did you see him last? So see and last are stressed, and then the them is completely reduced. Where did you see him? See him last. Where did you see him last? Where did you see him last? See him last. See him last. See him last. Where did you see him last? Okay, so finally, this brings us to our last question. When should I use these weak forms? Well, in normal speech, when you're talking about function words, you are going to use those weak forms. Okay, so function words, normally, if everything is normal and you're not adding any extra emphasis for any reason, then you're going to use those weak forms. But like I said earlier, if you are trying to add emphasis for some reason, maybe there was a loss in meaning, or you're checking for, you're clarifying, then you might use a strong form. So for example, or you just want to, something is really like, whoa, I can't believe you did that. Like with this example, I had a cup of coffee and an espresso. Now this is notable because not only did I have coffee, but I also had an espresso. So, wow, I might want to stress the and here because that seems pretty crazy. I had a cup of coffee and an espresso. Whoa, okay, no one is sleeping tonight if you do that. And so the and here is in the strong form. Now, another time when we might use a strong form instead of a weak form is when our word, like a modal verb, for example, appears at the end of a sentence. And a lot of times when we're answering a question that contains the modal verb, in our answer, that modal verb is usually at the end. So we stress it. Let's look at a couple examples. Can you play an instrument? So when I ask this question, kun is in the weak form. Can you play an instrument? So totally weak. Then when I answer, yes, I can. It's in its strong form. Yes, I can. Same thing with will. Will you wake me up before you leave? Will you? So that's completely in its weak form. Will you wake me up before you leave? But if I answer you, yes, I will. Here I am using the strong form of will, right? Because it's at the end. And a lot of times things at the end, they receive at least not a weak form, right? They're not completely reduced. Okay. So that does it for our reductions, strong and weak forms. Your weak game is strong now. Keep practicing, and I will catch you next time.